have you guys calmed down yet? Because I haven't. I haven't calmed down yet. I'm still on it, Crookie.
Yeah, I'm the same. I watched the highlights again with the kids last night. I was shouting Amad Diallo's name up the stairs. They went to bed and bouncing around the tunnel in the Etihad on Sunday. It was just, it was a great moment. And listen, football's about moments, and there's been some pretty low ones in the last decade or so. But when it comes to the Premier League campaign, that's one of the high points, isn't it? That 2 goals in the last 4 minutes to win a Manchester derby. Fantastic.
It was brilliant. And you know what? We have to just start there. There's no better place to start than Sunday's dramatic late win at the Etihad Stadium. Angelina, you predicted the W, right?
Woo!
Yeah.
How about that?
And we gave you a bit of stick. Oh, you don't really believe that.
You gave me a lot of stick, actually. Yeah.
I did, didn't I?
I'm still waiting for my apology.
I apologise. I had to apologise to a lot of people, like our own communities. Like all the Man United fans were saying, Flex, believe they're not that good. I just didn't believe that we would be able to exploit them.
Because you've been hurt so many times.
Because I've been hurt, so scarred.
I get it.
You know, you knew.
Yeah.
You knew.
It was, like I'd already said, Man City were in and still are in such a worse state than Man United when you consider the whole package of what's going on. And I just had this feeling that at the Etihad, they could get something from this game. And listen, it wasn't a derby for the ages, let's be honest. It was pretty mediocre. But for United fans, I think, to get a special moment like that, you know, the end of the game, to get the win, it's just so special. And you struggle to think of times when you've had a feeling as good as that.
It was unbelievable. Of course, there were, before the games, massive headlines that were circulating around the surprising discovery that there was no Marcus Rashford and no Alejandro Garnacho. They were left out of the squad. And here's what Ruben Amorim had to say about that after full time.
It was not a disciplinary thing. Next week, next game, new life. They are fighting for the places, but for me it's important the performance in training, the performance in game, the way you dress, the way you eat, the way you engage with the teammates, the way you push your teammates. Everything is important in our context in the beginning of Sunday when we want to change a lot of things, when people in our club are losing their jobs. We have to put the standards really high. And for that, they have to fight for the place in the team, and today the team proved that we can leave anyone outside the squad. You can manage to win if we play together.
Not mixing his words at all, Ruben Amorim. It was a breath of fresh air to the United fan base to see our gaffer in control of the situation. Ryan, Jamie Jackson, a good friend of the show, has had a massive piece in The Guardian sort of saying that Marcus Rashford is for sale. They want him to leave the football club, and these are the beginning members of that. Firstly, was it the right decision, or what do you make of the decision from Ruben Amorim to omit Garnacho and Rashford from the squad? And 2, what do you make of this whole situation that, Rashford is on the for sale list?
Well, firstly, it was vindicated, wasn't it, his decision, because we ended up getting the victory. So you have to say that the decision was a right one. I'm all for it. I'm a massive fan of Garnacho, you know that. But I'm all for them not making the cut if they're not training well. And he's alluded to behavioural things there as well, and attitude and how you eat and sit with the players and all that jazz.
Do you think you're going to see someone coming out fighting and saying, I'm embarrassed that was said about me? That's not happening. My Man United career is staying intact. Or do you think we will continue to see the same Marcus that we've seen for the last little while?
It's such an interesting question, isn't it? Because Marcus Rashford may have already had his last chance. I'm not, in terms of longevity, I'm not going to lie to you. But there's still a squad of players here, and he still has attributes, and he still may contribute to some serious results come the end of the season.
Crookie, let's just get to the chase. Do you think Marcus Rashford will leave in January? Do you expect him to leave in January? And what difficulties does that actually come with? Who would take Marcus Rashford in January? What would that deal even look like?
Well, that's the 400 grand a week question, isn't it? I've done a piece in my notebook for the talkSPORT website this week saying there is interest from Saudi Arabia. I'm told that Rashford isn't particularly keen to make that move. He still believes actually he can find his form and force his way back into the England squad for the 2026 World Cup, which seems a distant dream at this moment in time. But I spoke to Ruben Amorim afterwards as well. I said, how confident are you that these two players are going to react positively to what you've done? Because there's been high-profile instances in the recent past where players have not reacted positively, and he said they have to. It's not in my hands, it's in their hands. And if they train properly and they react in the right manner, there is a way back. So I think he's handled it absolutely superbly. I sort of agree with what Ryan has said about Rashford. It feels like he's already used his 9 lives. This is a long-term problem going back to the start of last season. We had the incident before that, actually, when he was dropped for the game at Wolves for reporting late for a team meeting. He did react well on that occasion, if you remember. He came off the bench in the second half and scored. So he needs to summon that kind of reaction again. But listen, football is a small world. Manchester is a small world. We all know the stories when it comes to Marcus Rashford and maybe not looking after himself in the right way off the pitch. And I think that's what Amorim was alluding to. So until he changes that, I don't see a way back.
And it is a tough one because no Man United fan wants to see Marcus Rashford in this way. You know, you are Manc born on bread as well, just as Marcus Rashford is, Angelina. And first, I'll ask you, obviously, you know, your reaction to the Marcus Rashford situation, but also for Ruben Amorim, what sort of a marker is this for him to put down to say, I'm not tolerating this. This is the Manchester derby, and I'm giving myself 2 less weapons to use in our armoury that could really help us off the bench and make it more limited to us out of principle.
I feel like there's no doubt as to who's in charge here. There's so much conversation about the players thinking that they can kind of do what they want, they can behave how they want. My takeaway from the way that he spoke and what he said, and you could read between the lines, but he put it so eloquently and it left me feeling like this is someone who is in charge of this group of players and is, at the end of the day, what did he say in his press conferences? He wanted players to care, to run, to work hard. If those players aren't giving that as a bare minimum, then the right to be dropped. Obviously, had the scoreline been different, I'm sure people would have had a different opinion.
But would he have still been right, though? Even if we'd lost that game 5-0, would it still been right out of principle?
He would have been right, but what the win has done is it's empowered him in the dressing room. Because had they have lost the game, then I'd imagine that Rashford and Garnacho could have walked back into training this week and said, well, you know, the manager's dropped us, you've lost the game. It would have put the power
Media
in their,
certainly
in
would have
their
done
court.
that. The questions after the game.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I was speaking to some of the journalists at half
would
time.
You
No, I wouldn't, because actually I backed the decision.
That's true.
You know, I'm fully behind the decision. But speaking to some of the written journalists at half time, they said to me, you know, if you're going to drop Rashford and Garnacho, you can't lose. So I think the narrative would have been very different had they not scored those late goals.
And you think he's reclaimed that narrative, Ange?
Yeah, I think he's legitimised himself, hasn't he? That he can make these big calls. And I think it's an important message that if you're not on your A game, then you're not going to be considered. I think that it was interesting, you know, like Marcus Rashford put something on social media, Garnacho hasn't. Again, you can start reading
into
it between them. No, probably not too much. I mean, I think that had Rashford not put anything on socials, I think people would have jumped on it like, oh, is he throwing his toys out of his pram or something? I don't know. I think that was a good move to just kind of say, oh, you know, he's watching the game, he's supporting the lads, etc. I think the Marcus Rashford situation in general, though, we've spoken about it time and time again. You know, it's time to cut that cord. I just feel like I don't see January happening, though, because why do clubs sign players in January? Because you need someone who's going to make an impact, who's going to change things, who's going to hit the ground running most of the time. He's not going to do that. I highly doubt he's going to do that. So on top of who's going to be interested, who's going to pay the money, his numbers just aren't there, and it's sad. And he's given Manchester United fans some great moments, but when you look across the whole thing, you know, I don't think he's had a Premier League season where he's got 20 goals plus.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and we'll have to see what happens against Spurs, whether these guys are back in the squad. We'll talk about that. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show.